You've been doing everything right. You show up every single day. You bring the feed at the same time, clean the stall, check the hooves, schedule the vet. You read the books, you watch the videos. You invested in the good saddle, the right bit, the proper groundwork program. You did the work. You put in the hours, and yet, if you're being completely honest with yourself, there's a distance between you and your horse that you can't quite name. A gap that shouldn't be there. A feeling that something is being withheld. Your horse is well fed, your horse is healthy, your horse performs, but your horse doesn't choose you. You can feel the difference. It lives in the way they turn their head away when you approach, in the flatness of their eye when you enter the stall, in the way they stand beside you but never quite lean in. They tolerate you, they work with you, but there's a ceiling, some invisible threshold that no amount of consistency or kindness seems to break through. And here is the thing that nobody in the horse world wants to say out loud. That gap isn't about what you're doing, it's about what you are. In the moment your horse is reading you, every single time. There is a category of horse owner that is genuinely different from the rest. They're not necessarily the most experienced. They don't always have the fanciest facilities or the most prestigious trainers. Some of them have made every beginner mistake in the book. But their horses move toward them. Their horses soften. Their horses choose to be near them when they have every option not to be. What do they know that you don't? The answer isn't a technique. It isn't a training method. It isn't something you can buy or practice in a round pen on a Tuesday afternoon. It's something much harder and much more specific than anyone has ever told you. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. Most people approach horsemanship as a skill problem. They believe the gap between an average owner and a great one is a matter of technique. Better hands, better timing, better feel. And technique matters. No one is saying it doesn't. But technique is downstream of something far more fundamental. And if you skip that something, your technique will always hit a ceiling. You'll refine your cues and your horse will comply. But compliance isn't connection. And your horse knows the difference even when you don't. Here's the part that most horsemanship programs never teach you. Because it's uncomfortable and it can't be marketed on a DVD. Your horse is not responding to what you do. Your horse is responding to what you are. Specifically to what your nervous system is broadcasting at the exact moment of interaction. Every moment, without exception. Horses are prey animals. That single biological fact reshapes everything about how they process the world. For 60 million years, the horse's survival depended on one primary skill: detecting threat before it became danger. Not the presence of a predator, the possibility of one. The horse's nervous system evolved to read the environment at a level of sensitivity that humans find genuinely difficult to comprehend. And that sensitivity didn't stop at other predators. It extended to every living thing in their environment, including the two-legged ones who started showing up about 6,000 years ago. When you walk toward your horse, they are not reading your intention. They cannot access your intention. What they can access, what they are built to access with extraordinary precision, is your physiological state, your heart rate, your muscle tension, the rhythm of your breathing, the quality of your movement, the coherence between what your body language is saying and what your autonomic nervous system is actually doing. This is not metaphor. This is not horse whisperer mysticism. This is measurable biology. And the research that has emerged over the last 2 decades has changed the way serious equine scientists understand the horse-human relationship at a fundamental level. And what that research shows is that your horse has been evaluating you from the very first second. Not judging you, evaluating you. The way a flight instrument evaluates turbulence. Constantly, automatically, without sentiment. The question is, what are they finding? A team of researchers at the University of Sussex in England conducted a series of studies that have become landmark references in equine cognition science. What they were investigating sounds almost too simple. Can horses read human emotional expressions? Not just body language, actual facial emotional cues. The kind of distinctions that even many animals can't make across species lines. What they found was unexpected enough that it required replication before the scientific community fully accepted it. Horses can reliably distinguish between photographs of happy human faces and angry human faces, and they respond to them differently at a physiological level. When shown an image of an angry human expression, horses' heart rates increased. Their left eye, which in many animals processes stimuli associated with threat or negative emotion, activated preferentially. The horse's bodies responded to a photograph of an emotion, not a real person, not a tone of voice, not even a moving image, a still photograph. Think about what that means for your live, breathing, emotionally fluctuating presence in the barn every day. If a horse's nervous system responds to a photograph of your emotional state, it is responding to everything about you in real time with a sensitivity you cannot fake and cannot suppress. That slightly elevated cortisol from the argument you had this morning on the phone, the low-grade anxiety about the bill that arrived yesterday, the frustration that is 3 layers beneath your smile when the lesson isn't going the way you wanted. Your horse is not interpreting these things. Your horse is feeling them, registering them as data about the safety or danger of the current environment. And here's the plot twist that changes everything. It's not the negative emotions that create distance. It's the inconsistency between what you're projecting and what you're actually feeling. Horses don't need you to be happy. They don't need you to be calm in the way a meditation app defines calm. What they need, what their nervous system is built to trust, is coherence. The alignment between your inner state and your outer presentation. When those two things match, regardless of what the emotion actually is, a horse can orient to you. They can predict you. And predictability for a prey animal is the foundation of safety. This is what separates the top 1% from everyone else. Not the absence of emotion, not perfect technique, not years of experience. Coherence. The riders and handlers in that small percentile have, sometimes consciously, sometimes without knowing why, developed the capacity to be genuinely physiologically present with their horses. Not performing presence, not performing calm. Actual regulated nervous system states that their horses can feel, confirm, and relax into. And the riders who struggle, the ones with the beautiful horses and the expensive equipment and the persistent gap in connection, are often the ones who have learned to look calm without being calm, who have learned to perform confidence without embodying it, who approach the barn in one emotional state while displaying another, and whose horses register that mismatch as low-level threat every single day. The mismatch doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to arrive shaking with anxiety or vibrating with suppressed anger for your horse to notice. It can be something as subtle as the difference between the surface smile and the tight jaw underneath it. The measured, careful voice that doesn't quite match the braced shoulders. The deliberate slowness of movement that is actually tension managed, not tension absent. Now, your horse doesn't need to understand the difference consciously. Their nervous system does the work for them, automatically, the way yours processes the temperature of the air, without requiring any conscious thought. What your horse is always asking, without words, without judgment, is simply, are you the same all the way through? Is what I see on the outside what's actually happening on the inside? And when the answer is yes, something in them releases. Not because you're calm, not because you're happy, because you're real. And real is something a prey animal's nervous system can finally actually rest around. Now let's go deeper into the science, because this is where it gets genuinely extraordinary. The researchers at the University of Rennes in France investigated something that built directly on the Sussex findings, but took them in a different direction. They wanted to know whether horses could not only read human emotional expressions in the moment, but remember them. Specifically, they tested whether horses would show altered behavior toward humans whose photographs they had previously seen displaying angry expressions, compared to humans whose photographs had shown happy expressions. The results were striking. When horses encountered a real person for the first time, their behavior was measurably different depending on what emotional expression they had seen on that person's photograph earlier. The horses who had seen the angry photograph were more vigilant, showed more avoidance behaviors, and were slower to approach. Not because the person was currently angry, not because there was anything threatening happening in real time, but because their nervous system had filed that person under a category of emotional state, and that filing was influencing the present moment. Your horse has a memory of you that extends beyond what you do in any single session. They have accumulated an emotional file on you. Every day you showed up distracted. Every session you started one way and escalated into something else. Every time your voice was soft but your hands were tight. Every inconsistency. It's all in there. Horses don't hold grudges, but they do hold patterns. And the pattern they've built around you is the foundation on which every interaction either succeeds or struggles. This also means something that should feel like relief. The pattern can change. It just requires understanding what actually builds it. The third piece of research worth understanding here comes from the University of Guelph in Canada, where scientists investigated the physiological relationship between horses and their primary caregivers during interactions, specifically measuring heart rate variability in both the horse and the human simultaneously. Heart rate variability, or HRV, is one of the most reliable indicators of nervous system regulation we have. High HRV in humans correlates with emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, and calm attentiveness. Low HRV correlates with stress, reactivity, and cognitive tunnel vision. What the Guelph research found was a synchronization effect. During interaction, the HRV patterns of horses and their familiar human caregivers began to mirror each other. When the human's nervous system was regulated, high HRV, calm attentiveness, the horse's HRV moved in the same direction. When the human's nervous system was dysregulated, the horses followed. This is not metaphor. This is not the horse picking up on your energy in the vague way people say it at barns. This is measurable physiological synchronization between two species' nervous systems during real-time interaction. Your nervous system and your horse's nervous system are literally talking to each other every time you're with them, and the conversation has a direction of influence. It flows predominantly from the human toward the horse, not the other way around. You are the thermostat. Your horse is the room. If this is already changing how you see your horse, subscribe to the Horse Soul, because what's coming next is even harder to believe. So what does the 1% actually do with this information? How does it translate from neuroscience into a Tuesday morning at the barn? The first thing they figured out, and this sounds almost insultingly simple until you try it, is that they don't approach the horse until they're ready to be honest. Not until they've performed the right face. Not until they've reminded themselves to breathe. But until the inside matches the outside. Until there's something like genuine settling in their own nervous system, however briefly, however imperfectly. Some of them do this consciously. They sit in the car for a few extra minutes. They walk slowly from the parking lot to the barn, not because they read in a book that slow walking is good, but because the slow walking is the process by which their own body finds its rhythm before they ask the horse to find them. They have learned through experience or through instinct that what they bring through the gate matters more than anything they do once they're inside. The average owner treats the walk to the barn as transition time, mentally reviewing the plan for the session, checking their phone, carrying whatever they were just carrying from the rest of their day. They arrive at the stall door still mid-thought, mid-stress, mid-elsewhere, and then they're surprised when the horse is half somewhere too. The 1% understands that arrival is the first interaction. It begins before you touch them. It begins before they can see you clearly. Because they can already hear you, already smell you, already feel the shift in the energy of the space that happens when you enter it. The second thing the 1% has figured out is something even more uncomfortable to name. They have learned to stop pretending with their horses. Not to stop managing their emotions. Managing your emotions is a human skill, and it matters. But they've stopped performing a false front and started working with what's actually present. If they arrive anxious, they arrive honestly anxious. And they let the horse meet that, briefly, before they begin the process of settling together. If they arrive tired, they don't put on energy they don't have. They bring the tired honestly, and they find a way to let the horse's presence be part of how the tired becomes something else. The interaction becomes genuine. I and horses, because their entire evolutionary history has trained them to detect genuine versus performed, respond to genuine in a way they simply cannot respond to performance. This doesn't mean you flood your horse with your emotions. It doesn't mean you process your grief in the saddle or take your frustration out in the round pen. It means you stop pretending that the surface and the interior are the same when they're not, because your horse already knows they're not. The pretending is for you. The horse has already filed the report. The third habit of the 1% is what I'd call perceptual patience, and it is perhaps the most rare. These are people who have learned to receive their horse before they ask anything of the horse. They stand, they watch. Yuck, they notice what the horse is doing before they've arrived. The set of the ears, the quality of the eye, the way the horse is carrying weight on its feet. Not because they learned a list of signals in a book, but because they've accumulated enough quiet hours of genuinely looking that they've developed a felt sense for what their specific horse looks like when things are fine versus when something isn't quite right. Most owners look at their horses through a filter of their plan for the session. They see what they're about to do. The 1% sees what's actually there. And that difference between projecting your agenda onto an animal versus actually receiving the animal in front of you is felt by the horse immediately. The horse knows when it's being seen versus when it's being used as a vehicle for someone else's goals. There's a concept in equine behavioral science called social attention, the degree to which an animal directs its awareness toward a social partner. Horses have been shown in research to allocate significantly more social attention to humans who match the horse's current attentional and arousal state than to humans who are out of sync with it. In other words, your horse pays more attention to you when you're paying attention to them in kind. The quality of mutual awareness between you and your horse is not a soft feeling. It is a measurable behavioral phenomenon with neurological underpinnings. Researchers at Uppsala University in Sweden extended this line of inquiry by studying how horses allocate their gaze toward familiar versus unfamiliar humans in ambiguous or mildly stressful situations. Now, what they found adds another layer. Horses not only look to familiar humans for information more readily than to strangers, but the quality and duration of that gaze-seeking behavior is directly correlated to the history of the relationship. Horses with owners who had spent more unstructured, low-demand time together showed longer, more sustained-looking behavior toward their humans when something uncertain appeared. They were using their relationship as a reference point for how to interpret the world. That is not a training outcome. That is not something you build in the round pen. That is something you build in the quiet hours, in the unplanned moments, in the 10 minutes when you brought the horse in from the field and then just stood there because you weren't in a hurry that day. Your horse stored that. I filed it under. This person is safe. This person is a resource when I don't know what something means. The 1% lives in that mutual awareness. Not as a technique, not as a method. As a practice they return to imperfectly and repeatedly, until it becomes the default mode of how they show up. Before I leave you with the last piece of this, drop a comment right now. Tell me your horse's name and the one behavior you've never been able to understand. I read every single one. Now let's talk about what you can actually do differently starting tomorrow. Not the philosophical version, the specific practical version that requires nothing but willingness and honesty. The first thing, change how you arrive. Before you approach your horse tomorrow, stop somewhere outside their line of sight and take 60 seconds. Not to do breathing exercises, not to perform calm, just to actually notice where you are, what you're carrying, what's really going on in your body. You don't have to fix anything in 60 seconds, you just have to know the truth of it before you ask your horse to meet you. That honest self-awareness, even unresolved, and is more coherent than a perfect performance of calm. And coherence is what your horse can actually use. The second thing, watch before you touch. Give yourself 2 full minutes of simply observing your horse before any contact, not assessing them for the session. Just watching them be a horse. Where are their ears? What is their eye doing? Are they moving freely or holding something somewhere in their body? This kind of looking serves two purposes. It gives you real information about your horse's state, and it begins to pull your attention genuinely into the present moment, which is where your horse already lives and where they need you to meet them. The third thing, match before you lead. If your horse is high, alert, a little energized, mentally elsewhere, don't immediately work to calm them down. Begin by meeting them where they are. Move a little more, breathe a little bigger. Let your energy reflect acknowledgement of their state before you begin the gradual process of settling. Horses don't trust regulation imposed from the outside without acknowledgement first. They trust regulation that grows from being genuinely met. This is the difference between suppression and co-regulation, and it's one of the most important distinctions in the entire field of equine behavioral science. The fourth thing, be boring when nothing is wrong. When the 1% spends more time with their horses doing nothing than the average owner can fathom. Not grooming for a purpose, not training for a goal, just being in the space. Reading in a chair in the barn aisle, sitting on the fence, standing quietly at the shoulder with no agenda and no timeline. These non-transactional moments of presence are what fill the emotional file your horse is building on you, with something other than demand and stimulation. They are the foundation of the relationship that persists when the sessions are hard, the lessons don't go well, and the trust needs to be a resource you can draw on. And the fifth thing, the hardest one, and the one that separates the people who get there from the people who are always almost there. Be willing to have a bad day honestly. Don't try to train through dysregulation. Don't push through the session when your horse is clearly telling you something is off and you're too in your head to hear it. The 1% has learned to read the moment when trying harder will cost them more than stopping. And they stop. Not because they're quitters, because they understand that the relationship is the long game, and one honest, short, non-productive session that ends in mutual dignity costs you nothing, while one forced, disconnected, escalating session that ends in compliance without trust can take weeks to repair. The gap you feel between you and your horse isn't permanent. It isn't evidence that you're doing everything wrong or that you're not meant for this. It's evidence that you've been operating at the level of behavior, yours and your horse's. When the actual conversation has been happening at the level of physiology, of nervous system, of the emotional information that passes between two beings before a single word or cue is exchanged. You've been speaking. Your horse has been listening to something underneath what you're saying. Something you didn't know you were broadcasting. Now you know. Think back to the first time you walked into the barn after a genuinely good day. A day when nothing was heavy, when you weren't thinking about the ride, when you just went to be with your horse because you wanted to be near them and you had nowhere else to be. Remember the way they turned toward you, the way the stall felt different, the way the whole interaction had a quality you couldn't quite name, but you've been trying to recreate ever since. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was your nervous system in a rare moment of unguarded coherence. Matching your inside to your outside without effort, without performance, without anything getting in the way. And your horse felt it, filed it, responded to it with everything they had. The 1% hasn't found a secret training method. They haven't unlocked some mystical frequency of horse communication. They have simply, through years of showing up, failing, paying attention, and being willing to be changed by the animal in front of them, found their way back to that quality of presence more reliably, more consistently, not always, not perfectly, but enough. Enough that their horses know something real is there when they arrive. Enough that the gap closed, slowly, imperfectly, and permanently. Your horse is waiting for the real version of you, not the competent one, not the confident one, the coherent one. The one whose inside and outside are telling the same story at the same time. That version of you already exists. Your horse has already felt them. They're waiting for that person to show up more often, and they will know the moment you do. If this video found you at the right moment, share it with someone who loves their horse. They need to see this too. And I'll see you in the next one.